Opera SM here with another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video on Battle of the Four Tribes, Part 1, Node 3.3. Last time we got a sweet turn 1 win, leveraging the 3.3 special event support that draws you a card whenever you cast a creature. When you draw a card, all cards in your hand gain 1 mana. And then whenever you cast a spell, your first creature gets +1/+1. Even if you don't have a lot of those legacy cards I have, or some of the higher rarity cards, you can absolutely still build to this archetype. What I've done here, I was playing Ralzeric, so just using the same blue-red color combination. I just did a sort for all the cards in Standard that are common and uncommon that could fit into this archetype. Basically, all you need are some cheap creatures, some or spells that can create creatures, and cards that draw cards. Any combination of these things can basically get you looping as long as the cards cost 6 mana or less. Obviously the cheaper cards are better in that sort of thing, just because you are able to cast more of them on a single turn to get the loop started. But once you have the loop going, you basically should just be able to draw into cards, and by the time they reach the end of your hand, have them charged up to 6 mana. I believe 6 mana is the number that it would get to if my math is right, though possibly if you had a deck full of all 6s, it's going to take a while to get going. But let's just go through and take a look here. Actually, this is the list that I want of just all the possible cards that could work for this sort of archetype. So cards like Artificer's Epiphany and Stratus Walk, I think, are auto includes in this deck just because they're super cheap and they draw you cards. Scorch Spitter, Glory Chaser, just generic 1/1s if we need them to fill out the deck. We're going to put a priority on haste creatures when we see them if possible, though if you can't do that, something like Samut Sprint for 6, which gives a creature +3/+1 and haste and draws you a card to keep looping, can absolutely give cards like this haste to be able to attack as well. Glimpse of Freedom, another card I would definitely include in this deck since it's a 3-power draw card spell. Bonded Construct, if you do have to play some of these generic 3-drop creatures, it has 2 powers, so I'd put this over some of the 1/1 creatures at 3. Subterranean Scout, a 2-power creature for 4. Radical Idea, a card I'm pretty sure I would include that just draws you a card. And if you're trying to play this to play quickly, just keep in mind that certain spells that you have, like Stratus Walk, for instance, if you give a creature flying, that will require targeting, though I like them if you're willing to spend a little more extra times and clicks because they are cheaper. So let's see, Radical Idea, Goblin Banneret, Discovery. Again, this will take a little more time, but you can surveil to get rid of some cards you don't necessarily want, or put stuff into your graveyard to draw a card if you want it. Clamor Shaman, this is the first one I really want to note because with its Riot ability, we can, the first time we play it, choose to give it haste, and then every other time have it be a 2/2. So I think this is going to be one of the cards I would have as a win condition in the deck, because we want to, if possible, be able to go off the turn that we start casting this, and we'll need haste creatures for that. So anything with Riot that has cost 6 or less should be a huge consideration if you have a super limited collection to do this. Witching Well at 5 would draw you a card when it enters the board. Also, when it dies, it could draw you 2 cards. We're hopefully winning the turn we start going off, but this is definitely an option here too. Winged Words draws you 2 cards, which is nice, and then if we play it in combination with Stratus Walk, it can actually only cost 3, which is pretty cool once we start going. I think it was Summon Ghost who figured out that combination in his pretty cool Grand Arbiter Goblin Electromancer cast a bunch of free spells in Standard deck that he made for one of our deck building challenges. But we'll just go through the rest of these really quickly. Some of these cards that can discard a card and then draw a card are great because it allows you to to draw 2 cards, even if your hand would be full, because you discard and then be able to draw 2, which is nice. So that can help charge a little extra mana on things. Sphinx's Insight draws 2. Magmatic Insight, another discard and draw. Jace's Triumph draws 2. Thrill of Possibility is a discard and draw, which could theoretically get cards, have some charged mana as well if it's the first card you cast that turn, so that's interesting. Samut Sprint, this was the card that I was talking about earlier. If you don't have haste creature options, this does allow you to run this loop and still have creatures that would be able to attack this turn. Target creature gets +3/+1 and gains haste until end of turn, and then you get to draw a card. So this is great. It costs 6, which is on the expensive side, but it's still within the realm of being able to cast and continue casting in this loop. Again, we want everything to cost 6 or less. Sage Rose Savant enters, draws a card. And this would actually draw us 2 cards because we get one from the creature coming in and then a normal draw, which is kind of cool. Perceptive precognitive perception. A little switch there. Draw 2 cards. Notion Rain could draw us 2 and have us take damage. I'm not so keen about the taking damage. This creature again could draw us 2 cards. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and then we get a creature coming in, so it would draw a card as well. Then when it would die, it could create tokens. Some people are worried about token replacement, so keep that in mind if you have a way to just get down to 5 cards in hand, or excuse me, I don't know what I'm saying exactly, but get down to just a possibility of 3 creatures being created in the deck. So far we've just seen one creature, that 4-drop creature with Riot, in order to give stuff haste. So we'll keep that in mind, but if we can find another haste creature going through, I think there was one other idea that I found going through stuff, which we'll see if we get to a little bit later, but if not, Samut Sprint can give your creatures haste if needed. Golden Egg does draw a card when it enters the board. It is one of the more expensive ones, so if you have anything that costs less, I'd recommend those first. Dragon Fodder. These can create 2 dragon tokens. And something that you can do, as I mentioned before, what I did previously when this was back in old standard, was I reinforced a lot of Saproling sacks with some 5-drop in green. There's some 5-drop Saprolings. I don't think they're in standard anymore. Maybe they are, I don't remember. But one option that is easy to do is if you can find multiple cards that can create tokens of the same type, that does allow you to really start getting a big buffed up creature that can attack. Especially if you don't have enough draw spells, sometimes what you may have to do is play more than 4 creatures, and then it just takes a lot of time. You have to replace a lot of creatures as they come in, but then that allows you to keep a stack of creatures reinforcing, and if you have multiple cards that create the same kind of tokens, that can just speed up that process. Aven Pioneer is another card that would make a token, a Thopter token, and that would draw you 2 cards. Alchemist Vial would disable a creature and draw you a card. Probably not one I'd run, but if you need it, it's an option. This was the other card that could create hasty stuff. I almost missed this when I was going through stuff. But Satyr's Cunning costs 5. It's one of the newer cards. And then it creates 2 Satyr tokens, which are 2/2 haste creatures. So this is pretty awesome. For 5, we get a 2/2 haste, which is going to draw us 2 cards. I think this card would definitely go in the build if we were making it. If you're looking to go on the whole Goblin train, you do have Goblin Investigator if you decide to go down the route of reinforcing Goblin stacks. Investigator, when this enters the battlefield, create a Goblin token. So it would draw you 2 cards and then get you another Goblin that could go as part of the stack. Depose is another one of those weird ones of disable target creature until end of turn and then draw a card. Theoretically, we could disable one of our creatures if we want to do that. I had it here just because the backside, which the backside of cards don't think about for loops, but this did create Thopters, and there was one other card, I think that blue card, that created Thopters. And while Goblin Gathering does cost 7, people in the From the Ashes Slack have been playing around with certain ideas of maybe running one card that does cost more than 6 if you have multiple other cards that can draw you 2 cards, a turn or that can draw and discard, it should be able to, if it sticks in your hand, be able to be cast as you cast some cheaper spells going along with it. It is a little risky because if you get multiple 7-drop cards you draw in a row, it does make this so it'll clog up your hand and you'll have to wait till the next turn to get going. But if you do go the goblin token stack, you can absolutely try including this card. Just keep in mind you want to have a lot of other cheap cards so that card is not going to clog your hand, so you could draw other cards and then get up to the 7 mana. Hopefully this is helpful for you if you're looking and have a pretty limited collection, like the idea of just getting to basically combo off and, you know, turn 3 or earlier. Probably realistically with this sort of deck, just it might not have the power to get those turn 1 or turn 2 kills necessarily, especially if you have a lot of 5 or 6 drops in here. But if you can run a lot of the 2, 3, and 4 drop spells, I think this deck could absolutely still do a good job of winning. It's going to take a little while longer to win than my other one, which had the 2/2 hasty double striker and the 6/1 haste creature, but it could still absolutely win. So hopefully this is helpful. Probably what I'll do is I will make another video, since this one's already running pretty long, of working on culling that other deck down, and we'll make a standard pauper version of this deck, which can take on the 3.3 node in Battle of the Four Tribes Part 1, using and leveraging the special support gem on that one. Thanks everyone.